And that brings us into the Brian Ferentz situation.
Yeah, the blind spot.
Yeah, the blind spot.
Well, you could see how a team that realizes they're elite at defense and special teams would attempt to eliminate, any type of error that could set those other two groups back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's interesting because when Brian took over, was 2017 his first season as OC? I think it was. Because I think, I mean, in that season, you had the 5-touchdown game from Stanley against Iowa State.
Mm-hmm.
You had the 55-point output against Ohio State. Like you had, granted that was followed up with the 2017 at Wisconsin game, where you had 84 yards of offense, and then also mixed in there was the Penn State 2017 game where you had, I think, 140 yards of offense.
And the Michigan State, which was
another pitiful, I think 220, 230 in offense. But there was signs of hope. You were dealing with a young QB. You had a freshman receiver, Marset. You had, sophomore tight end in Font, and a freshman in Hawkinson. The pieces were there to evolve into, potentially a top 60 offense where you're going to run the ball, but you have this ability to be explosive and you have this ability to throw the ball. Mm-hmm. And that evolved into 2018 where it all kind of coalesced in back-to-back games against Minnesota and Indiana, where you had 45 and 48 put outputs. Mm-hmm. And that was after a Wisconsin game where it actually really wasn't the offense that
the defense.
It was the defense that let us down, and special teams that let us down against Wisconsin that could have set us up for a Big Ten title. Mm-hmm. It was still kind of crescendoing into Brian was the correct hire here. And since that season, we've seen a real drastic downturn.
Yeah.
In 2019, you had a senior QB with it was laden with receivers. You had Marset, Brandon Smith, a bunch of guys like Tyron Tracy. But the issue was you didn't have that key tight end piece. Sean Barr was still developing, but Wheating wasn't what we needed him to be at that time, and Laporta didn't develop until later in that year. And then I think what truly set the program back was 2020.
Yep.
You got to play fake football for, I think, 8 games.
Yep.
It's guys where there's no one's in the stands.
It's the moment that set back Iowa football, without a doubt. And it's you come into the season 2020, everyone was talking about the weapons Petrus is going to have. Mm-hmm. And it was the focus of our entire team was we're going to throw the ball 40 times a game, 35 times a game. We came out against Purdue. I think we threw it 50 times, or maybe only 30 times in that game. We threw it like 50 times against Northwestern.
Yeah,
so back-to-back games of just chucking the ball around.
Yeah,
and that's essentially when Brian Ferentz's career ended, and Kirk took over.
Yeah,
and Kirk's new philosophy of how the offense was going to run from then on was we're going to run the ball in simple sets out of under center, and that's going to be our focus. If we're going to throw, it's going to be out of play action sets or anything, a variation off the run. It's not going to have, this kind of downfield aspect to the passing game unless it's tied to the run game in some way. And we're going to go completely back to the early 2000s offense, essentially.
It truly was.
And it had two really, why that worked is you played COVID defenses. So that's not just only you're losing out on Micah Parsons and you're losing out on, key guys on good teams not playing, but also there's no fans in the stands. Mm-hmm. And that was the worst.
The willpower to defend the run without anyone witnessing the game, without any emotion in the room.
You think about, Joe Rossi's defense that year. Actually had a lot of, good players in its front seven.
Ton of good
got
players.
Moved all game.
Yeah.
Penn State, who obviously they've been a top 5, top 10 defensive unit every year, and they recruit like that. We blocked them all game.
Yeah.
And we blocked everybody all season, just running the outside zone.
And also to mention, though, you also had a Lark Jackson, Cole Banwart, Tyler Linderbaum.
Yeah.
You had that left side could really go and would have been a productive team
in any year.
But this was particularly productive
because of those two
scenarios.
factors.
Yeah.
Right. And so we end up going from that COVID year to 2021, we won 12 straight games playing this style. And we won 12 straight games, basically eliminating Petrus as a QB, eliminating the receivers, and playing special teams. We had unreal special teams back then even. Torrey Taylor and Charlie Jones was a punt returner, and our kicking game was amazing. And we basically just leaned all into the strengths of our team. Mm-hmm. And that rattles off 12 straight wins. And it felt like going into 2021, we were doing it felt like we had the magic potion.
Yeah.
From as outside fans that cared a lot and really focused on the team and what Kirk and Brian thought they had, they've re-identified and re-established who they are as a program. Mm-hmm. And you hit that Penn State week the crescendo of that, and you win the game by punting, running the ball, not turning the ball over, playing defense. And it just kind of like, it perks like, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And from that point on, that Penn State game, you lose next week to Purdue. And the program has never really recovered from that 12-win season or that 12-win streak because we're still playing that football.
Yeah.
And Kirk is so hell-bent on that's how we're going to play football forever, is to eliminate those positions and focus on our strengths. But now it's put us into a position where Charlie Jones transfers, Keegan Johnson transfers, Arlen Bruce transfers, maybe for other reasons.
Yeah.
But, recruiting took a huge dip this year. We brought in no good skill on the entire freshman class.
Well, you could also say in parallel, too, it's like if you go through QB recruiting,
right?
Since
I just want to focus like what this is doing to our program too. We're gonna have a hard time recruiting for a long. Like, what receivers coming in the portal?
Yeah,
what receivers coming from? We have 34 catches combined by receivers throughout the entire year, and they've completely leaned totally into the system where it's not only hurt us the last 2 years, become an embarrassment since 2022 in offense, but I mean we're going in no different direction right now. Thus, bring in Beth.
Yeah.
We are so sick in the head in this program to think that 12-win win streak is reality and what we actually will always be and how we should focus. And it's a blind spot that she is eradicating. And the first step in that is getting rid of Brian. And it's moving on to a new offensive coordinator that can maybe bring new ideas in. But it won't do anything to fire Brian unless you can also convince the new hire or influence that new hire. Because if it's an internal promotion, nothing will change.
Well, I don't think it's going to be an internal promotion. Bud Meyer has been on the staff for 2 years now. It'd be difficult to sell anyone that he's going to have an impactful change to how our schemes develop. Mm-hmm. We've mentioned this in the comments of our last video, but Paul Chryst feels like a tractor beam for this program.
Right.
They took the reins away from him at Wisconsin from calling plays. They forced him to give up that role and give it to, I believe it was Bud Meyer at the time. Mm-hmm. Actually, I might be wrong on that, but he was actually, they said that for him to go away from it. So if we're going to stay within our current idea of football, I think he is our only option that makes any sense. I don't know if there's a single guy in the country that's running power football successfully that could come into a program like this and be able to counter defensive coordinators correctly. What we like to see, though, is just, an evolution. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Beth does this unless she has an idea of how she wants the next offense to look. She mentioned in her comments that, we leave the coordinator selection to the head coaches, but we, as an administrator, we always have some say. There's a ton of money floating around the Big Ten right now. And Kirk can't just rely on him being here for 25 years. Like the product's obviously become very stale. Mm-hmm. Like to everyone around you, an uplift is needed. It's very apparent. I think she's going to have some say and be like, okay, if you're going to go with Chryst, we have to be more aggressive in our offensive approach. We can't, I think I counted at one point during the Northwestern game, strong side runs. I think we ran like 12 in a row because it was just, but that's very basic offensive lineman thinking. Mm-hmm. You line up in a set, they're giving you a favorable set, strong side. Yep. Take it. And it's like, man, this is college football. This is not high school football where your left tackle is going to take the guy back 4 yards and you're going to win every single time in that area. So it's going to be very interesting how the actual selection process occurs.
Yeah. I think worst case scenario is the internal hire. I'd say B overall grade in my mind would be Paul Chryst.
Yeah.
And I honestly think like Beth would be okay with it.
Yeah.
Because Kirk can sell it as this is my idea still. I want to run my program how I want. He does have some historical numbers from 2018 and 2019 where he put up some real numbers. I think Kirk still has leverage in that relationship. As much as this move, got Brian fired, he's still the owner of this athletic department. As much as, Beth is trying to push against that and the president's trying to make Beth push against it, he still is the elder statesman. And to take his son away from him, I think now he kind of has leverage back in the situation.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time she's saying she could, if he hires Chryst, that she has any say in my mind. Because it still would drum up enough, positivity around the program. Best case scenario is he goes and grabs the Kansas OC or, some modern OC that's running more of a spread formation that incorporates, QB runs.
Like you just have to. We've talked about this before, but you have to be able to sell this offense to QBs and receivers.
Right.
And that's not to say that all of a sudden Iowa's going to start recruiting those players at a super high level, but you need to be average in at those positions.
Yeah. How is Iowa State recruiting, better receivers and quarterbacks than you are?
Yeah.
Like that should
Kansas.
Why is Kansas? Yeah.
Kansas State, all those programs.
There's plenty of like programs that can just, they focus on different things. They focus not on arm strength. And I think that's the big thing that we've actually already moved towards with the recruiting of Marco and the recruiting of Rezar. We're focusing more on 3 stars and low 4 stars that can run rather than just arm strength. So that's a good step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But that should be the mantra to the entire offense is build these teams to be more functionally good at getting first downs rather than having an entire playbook. And I think that's what the next hire needs to be, is just getting to the 80th overall offense like that every single Big 12 team has. There's no Big 12 team that struggles to move the ball.
And I honestly can see the point of staying as a power football team. Like it does make sense when teams zag. You don't necessarily have to go with them because a lot people are going to build smaller defenses. If you can keep this niche power football going and develop tight ends around that, you're going to eventually need a receiver. Like there's no doubt in my mind. You need one guy. You need a Quintez Cephas, from Wisconsin, the guy that can take the top off for you. But it's also difficult for me to say we need wholesale changes, and then we could come out and run what Michigan State's running. Right. Michigan State's running spread, but they can't do anything anyways.
Yeah.
So I think you can probably still lean into what Iowa football does well. Mm-hmm. I think my biggest gripe with Brian, and I think it was compounded by his dad being the head coach, is neither of them had a creative bone in their body that they about how to design an offense. Brian was basically poaching everything from any other coordinators I've been close to. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he took a lot from the Patriots. Sure he took a lot from Ken O'Keefe and Greg Davis. But the longer his reign went on, the less creative we got.
Right.
And I think that was a product of him kind of running out of ideas and not really knowing how to build this, yin and yang offense where it's all going to flow into each other. You take a guy like Chris, he's been an OC at 3 different places.
Right.
There's no doubt in my mind he has an idea of how to make this all fit together. Mm-hmm. And
actually another hire I thought of too was Kirk Soraka.
Yeah,
he just went to Rutgers for
not that much money.
Not much money. There's an easy way to hire him.
Yeah,
he can play. You want to run the ball. You look at Monungai's stats the last 3 games. He's doing exactly what we want to do.
Yeah,
it's not chucking it around, and he's doing that at Rutgers with the worst offensive line and worst personnel as a whole, and the worst recruiting pitch.
Yeah.
Go hire him and score, 30 points a game.
Yeah.